Hey y'all, Zelda here. I am coming to you with another Faves and Flops Bookworm Chronicles to share the books that I read in February 2026. Specifically, I'm going to share the 4 and above, so 4 to 5 star reads, and the lower 2 reads. I am surprised that this is the first that I am recording because I had so many ideas of things that I wanted to record over this past month, but things were just so busy. But I had such a good reading month, actually, so I'm actually really excited to record a little bit. Before I start, I do want to name that last month there were a couple books that were like 1 star and below that I like really felt like were flops. In this one, I am, just for like the sake of the form, gonna share like my least faves, but there was nothing below a 2.5. And for the scaling that I do, like I said before, I am not claiming to be any authority. I just like what I like and have the reasoning for that. I would say like a 3 is like most books start off at a 3. Like if it is not like it's kind of neutral, like it like gets that to start and then it like loses or gains based on like how much I enjoyed it and loved it. If it is kind of like losing things, it's like plot holes, lack of originality, like predictability, writing. If it's like 2 to like 1 to 2, like something's really off. Like I really didn't like something about it. I thought it was like a very clunky or like put me off. If it was a book that had any sex, it was like really unsexy or problematic. If it's like below a 1, like I felt like it was problematic in a not good way. And like not starting a conversation, not like holding sensitive material, perpetuating negative stereotypes, or just like I genuinely was like, I can never get that time back. I generally consider anything like 3, like 4 and above are things like I would consider rereading if I really liked it. 5s are like absolutely would keep it in my library, love it so much. 2 to a 2 read, I generally wouldn't reread it. I wouldn't even keep it. I'd donate it. But you know, whatever. But I'm not mad about it. So it was a good month overall, and I have quite a few. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books that I'm going to share with you that are 4 to 5 star, and then only 2 that were 2.5 and 2.25 stars. All in all, I read 19 books this month. That includes digital, paper, audio, but actually I haven't really been reading much digital because I've mostly been like going to the library and getting a library haul. And so it's mostly been like paper books or audiobooks. And my average rating was 3.71 stars. If you see me looking down, it's because I wrote everything down. So because usually the information's on my story graph. But yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to start with my faves. I'm going to go down and rate it. So I'm going to start with 5 star and then I'm going to go down to 4 star and list them in that order. And then I'm going to talk about the flops, which, like I said, some people maybe love these books. I did notice I don't think that these were rated necessarily as low on Storygraph as I personally rated them. I just didn't feel like they warranted a higher rating for myself. And you are welcome to disagree with respect in the comments if you like. The absolute favorite book that I read this month, absolutely blew me away, was a nonfiction. It is Mother Mary Comes to Me by Arundhati Roy. And this is one of those books that I read and am like so moved. It made me so inspired as someone who does write, but as like an avid reader. It had a lot of history. This is I guess like memoir style nonfiction, but it does have a lot of history involved in it, about India, about, it about Kashmir. It's just a really, really beautiful book. It's about her mother dying and then her relationship with her mother. I will say, always check out the content warnings on Storygraph. I think that's such a great resource. This does have abuse, both physical abuse and childhood sexual abuse. So do proceed with caution, but I do think that everything was handled with like sensitivity and even like integrated in a very like loving way. I'm just so moved. I know I'm late to the party on Arundhati Roy. I feel like she is so famous. She won the Booker Prize. That's even like talked about in this book is that experience for her. And I know that many people have probably read her stuff, including her fiction and other nonfiction, but I haven't. This is the first book that I've read by her. And it is one of those books and authors where I cannot wait to go and read everything that she's ever written, which is so exciting. As someone who reads a lot, I feel like it's a whole world that I get to delve and dip my toe into and just like dive headlong into, really. Like, I'm really excited. So I'm sure you'll see more of those on my reads. So that was my 5-star for the month. In terms of 4.5 star, one of the 4.5 stars, I kind of am like qualifying because I will say like I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I do. I really love them. I feel like they're beautiful. They're so well written. And my spouse and I are reading them out loud to each other, which is really sweet. And they're so well suited to that. And my 4.5 stars is what I rated The Two Towers by JRR Tolkein. And I just feel like I would have rated this 5 stars when I was younger. And now I just, after reading it out loud, I was like, some parts of this book kind of like the pacing is really slow. And like, I don't know. It's like, it was hard. I think I had just read another book that I really, really loved. And right when I rated it, I was like, I don't know. There has to be some gradient of rating. So it was a very like emotional based decision. And I will say like, it's a great book. I love it. 4.5 stars is really high. Like I said, it's not a scientific rating. I recently watched one of Elise Myers's book reviews, and I felt like I am like so obsessed with how detailed and like elaborate the rating system is. Like, I just really go based on vibes and it's out of 5 stars because it's on my Storygraph. So yeah, so it's not that deep. I reserve the right to change my mind if I read it again in the future. Okay. My second 4.5 star rating was This Mouth Is Mine, by Yásnaya Elena Aguilar Gil. This is a book, another nonfiction. It is a book about literary justice. Specifically about Indigenous languages and like keeping them alive, so to speak. A big like theme throughout the essays were that people don't stop speaking languages for any reason other than being oppressed, essentially, and that I really loved this kind of concept woven throughout about how like learning a language is such a form of like respect for a culture and like almost like a love language type of thing. I just really loved the way that she spoke about language. It is translated. It's really beautiful and thought-provoking. The only reason it wasn't 5-star, honestly, is because for books of essays, I personally like to see essays that don't have a ton of overlap between the essays, where I'm not reading one and then reading the next and I'm like, okay, that kind of like was the same as the others. Like, I almost see that this was almost like a collection. I was expecting it to be kind of heavy, like dense, honestly, just because I didn't know a lot about it before I read it. And when I actually was reading, I was like, wow, this is like light and kind of pithy and even funny at parts. So I feel like it was really approachable. I really liked it. There were even like collections of tweets in certain parts. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. And I think it was really thought-provoking. I will definitely keep the book for reference and will revisit it in the future. Okay, 4.25 stars. Next is The Demon of Beausoleil by Mari Costa. This is a graphic novel. It is one that I got from the library. I read most of the graphic novels and manga that I read, I get from the library. If I really, really love it, then I'll go buy it and so I can reread it whenever I want. But I love reading graphic novels, and they're really expensive. So it's fun to get an assortment of them and get to share them with my local community type of thing. This book was so much more fun than I was expecting, honestly. It's about a half demon, and it kind of opens and he is like sleeping with his sister's fiance, essentially. So he's got this like kind of raunchy history, and his bodyguard and him have a like kind of like romance arc. That's kind of like the plot, and is kind of apparent from the very beginning. There's like a flirtatious vibe. And I was kind of expecting it to be lighter, but it actually was light. It had a plot, a couple different types of plots, as is not super uncommon in kind of graphic novels. So there were like a couple arcs almost, because he's like an exorcist. He's like a half demon that's an exorcist. And then he also has a lot of backstory with like a previous like romance. And there's also a dynamic with his family and like his identity as a half demon. And I actually feel like it approached a lot of themes in a very like respectful and like not on the nose type of way, but it covered them in a way where it was like really seamlessly woven into the story. I was expecting to kind of like just, you know, get an enjoyable experience. I usually like read a graphic novel like how someone might watch a movie. Like I sit down and I have an hour or two or a couple hours and I like read all the way through it, and it's just like an immersive experience. And with this, it was such a cool experience. I just really liked it. I loved the art style. I loved the, you know, the banter between them. It was just really good. Everything about it, I was impressed. I loved it. It definitely is like, has a lot of like sex themes and is kind of raunchy at parts. So not for the kiddos. As I think some people, maybe if they're not super familiar with graphic novels, they think of them as like, oh, they're like child friendly because there's like a lot of pictures. And if you are familiar with graphic novels and manga already, you're probably like, yeah, because like a lot of it actually isn't. But this is definitely one of those that I would say is more like an adult graphic novel. So be that as it may, I loved it and would recommend. Another 4.25 that I had, this is the last 4.25, which is another nonfiction called The Singularity is Nearer by Ray Kurzweil. I think that's how you pronounce it. I will put all of the authors, the books and their authors in the description, so you can go and look through if you want to read some of them, or see how things are spelled so you can look it up yourself type of thing. The Singularity is Nearer. So this is an updated version. This is science, like a science writer, I guess, like a scientist. It's about AI and merging with AI. It's not actually about, it's using like the singularity as like a metaphor. It's not like literally about like the what the singularity usually refers to, but this is the singularity is near it. He's referring to this point at which humans, it's almost like a cyborg point where like humans will merge their capabilities with AI to like essentially like have the next step of human evolution in a way, where humans like brain neurological capacity will have access to things like the cloud on like an ingrained level. A lot of it is like theoretical science. So it does go over science. It also goes over the predictions that he made in the first edition of this book called The Singularity is Near, and talked about some of those that had happened and kind of made new updated ones. And as someone who doesn't know much about this topic, like I am not a scientist, I am not a coder, I don't know a lot in terms of like the actual science behind, you know, AI or how that would merge with biological advancements. But it was really interesting to me as someone who loves science fiction. And I was actually so inspired by some of these things. And I think reading really good science that is kind of even speculative science can be really like, good fertilizer for writing and world building. So if you love sci-fi, even if you're not a writer and you just love sci-fi, this is kind of an interesting book. And I feel like he touched on some of the things that are like what could happen that like I didn't even really think about, like the idea that eventually there will be way to like have biotech and neural networks that is like non-surgical, that is like entered maybe like through the bloodstream type of thing, or like through the like digestive system, like this kind of like microscopic, and like how nanotech in that way might work, that I just found really inspiring. I started writing a short story after like reading a couple chapters of this. So I really liked it. I thought it was interesting. I can't speak to like how specifically true it is. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I like reading about science. So 4.25 stars for me. In terms of 4 stars, one of my 4 stars was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. This is a age gap romance. I love Ali Hazelwood. I think she's an amazing author. One of the things I love most about Ali Hazelwood, which I don't think is like an unpopular, I think in fact it is a popular opinion. I think that a lot of people who like Ali Hazelwood like her for this reason, is that she does a really good job of creating like neurodivergent characters and tackling issues, like inviting issues into romance that I actually think are romance's like strongest suit, which is the ability to attend to things like trauma and interpersonal and power dynamics and things like that. Because it is an age gap romance, which there's another one on this list, actually. I don't know whether I was doing some trauma incorporation, since I've been doing a lot of trauma work around people being triggered by things like the Epstein files, and that, this has been a topic a lot that I don't always like gravitate towards age gap romances though. I don't find it to be like the sexiest trope, and I don't really like it as like, oh, this isn't addressed. Like the power dynamic isn't really addressed in anything other than like, this is a challenging social issue type of thing. Like, how do our friends get along kind of thing. But this is like, I really liked watching someone struggle a lot with like the power dynamic in a way that feels like the power dynamic was being explicitly discussed and talked about in like the resolution of it. It was sexy too. I think Ali Hazelwood is great at writing the sex scenes and is pretty spicy. So I would say this is a really good spicy romance. And if you love age gap romances, I think you'd probably like it. I also will say, like, you might, whether you rate them as highly as I would, is neither here nor there. I just tend to like Ali Hazelwood. Okay, another 4-star is, okay, this is like a dark romance that is spicy and is also dark. So heads up, right? It is Nocticadia by Keri Lake. I gave this 4 stars. I almost could give it more stars than this. I don't know. There were certain things where I was like especially the ending, which I'm not going to like talk about, like not in a spoiler type of way, but there were a couple of things that I feel like just got wrapped up really quick and was kind of like, that was kind of weird and sudden and okay, whatever. A lot of suspense for like really kind of, I don't know, the pacing maybe was like a little weird, but it had that like dark thing where there was like a thriller happening and a mystery and like plot twists, and the characters were really good, and it was like kind of a slow build up burn and very sexy. I really liked it. Yeah. And it is like, I would say in dark, it's like got that kind of like gruesome aspect to it. So, proceed with caution. It is about like a professor who is at this like magical school, like a dark academia type of vibe, where they're studying this parasite, and he does like kidnap people that have done bad things and like test this out on it. And so there's like, and then the, heroine has like her own arc as like a student at the magical school. So it's like a student teacher trope. It's another age gap romance. And they like don't resist that much. Like there's a little bit of like attending to the power dynamic, but also like not that much. So it's a little less like, oh, I love how this tackled this issue, and just like, I liked it. It did it for me. So, proceed as you will. I tend to kind of like the dark romances, attending to trauma in the background, like with my own trauma history. I just like really like that kind of being attended to. I think it makes it more interesting, dynamic, relatable. So I tend to enjoy those. And it was exciting. Yeah. The plot was plotting. So that is another 4-star. And then my last 4-star, so this is the last of my faves. This was Passiontide by Monique Roffey. And this was such an interesting book. It was like a kind of like a whodunit type of book, I guess. It was written in dialect, I guess, right? Where it was like in I think Caribbean dialect, and it was a murder, but it was also about this like feminist uprising movement, and it was fiction, but it was very immersive. I really liked the characters. They were like these poetic, like the person who got killed had these kind of like poetic moments, and there was a lot of like, it just felt really relevant. And yeah, it was like a really interesting book. I've found myself really like pausing. I read it like not as fast. I didn't like munch through it super quickly. I did finish it all at once. Like I kind of like dabbled in it the first bit, like read a little bit and was listening to other books and read a little bit more, and then I like finished it all at once. It was pretty exciting. And it was not like a typical, I don't know, I would put this more in the like literary fiction category, because it was like doing some really interesting things in terms of form. The writing was really good. It was stylized in a very interesting way. I will say, because of the dialect, that like just makes it a little bit more challenging to read. If that's I know some people have challenge, like, are that is difficult. It's like a lot of like the speech patterns and the description, the way it's read. But I mean, I read it on paper, so I also imagine it might be an interesting one as an audiobook, but I don't know who the narrator is or how to find it as an audiobook. So yeah, it was really interesting. I definitely would recommend it, especially if you're like, I love just like fiction or kind of a whodunit with like a really interesting, almost like historical fiction, but not like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting, and I would read something else by the author, and I honestly got it because I really liked the cover art. I initially checked it out from the library. I had to return it, and then I like bought it when I saw it next because I was like, I still want to read that, but I'm not ready yet. So I do own it, and yeah, I think I would revisit it at some point in the future. So those are my faves, and honestly, they were really good last month, so I felt really happy about that. In terms of the flops, like I said, not super devastating this month. I don't feel angry at either of them. I mostly just was like, they didn't impress me. I wouldn't revisit them. And honestly, not surprising. And that's okay sometimes. I'm someone who, like, I read a lot. And so I think other people, they watch, like, I don't watch a lot of reality TV. Like, nothing wrong with it. I watch it once in a while. But like when I'm listening to like a romance or a fantasy, I don't always need it to be the most earth-shattering thing. Sometimes I like what I call like popcorn read. They're kind of like a palate cleanser. And this is not to insult them. They're just like not doing anything super interesting. They're not super thought-provoking. They're like leaning into the tropes and not doing anything interesting. And maybe I don't think the writing is quite as good, which is absolutely a personal opinion. And so, not to say anything like, it's not that shocking. I bought this one. I also buy a lot of books. I use Libro FM for my audiobooks, and I buy a lot of books in the sales. And so sometimes I'll buy a book by an author that I'm like not that shocked that I'm not going to adore in the future, but like it kind of did it, or the sex scenes weren't that bad, or the character was kind of cute, or whatever, you know? So this was one, it's called I Like You Like That by Kayla Grosse. And it's about a pop singer and her bodyguard. And it's a second chance romance, which I will say is not my favorite trope, just personally, like whatever. I just like, I know it's often told a lot in like flashback sequence. And I just am kind of like, oh, come on. It's like a lot of like build up and tension, but like tension because of like timeline differences, which I feel like is not like the most exciting way to build tension. I don't know. So that wasn't like my favorite thing, but I knew that going into it, and like it was fine. It was fine. It was okay. I like that it attended to fat phobia, which is, you know, I like that some books attend to that and to like privilege and dynamics, at least in some way. And it did do that. So I think that kept it from being lower. But, you know, there was another book that I read about like a hurricane chaser by Kayla Grosse. And I just was like, I don't think this is my favorite vibe, but also not super bad. Okay. And then the last flop was 2.25. That was the lowest book that I rated this month, which honestly is pretty good. It was called A Scar in the Bone by Sophie Jordan. It was the second in a series. Honestly, it was just super unmemorable. Like, I'm even having a hard time really remembering a lot of what I didn't love about it. I really think that the ending and the way that the plot unfolded was really disappointing to me. Like, I feel like it was a really cool concept, but it didn't really excite me or move me in any way. I listened to the first one of these and part of the second one. It was the first book that I finished in the month, and I read the first one like as an audiobook in Spain, and then I started listening to it on the plane back and finished it at like the 1st of March, I think, or the 1st of February, I think. And I just, yeah, I found it underwhelming. It was unexciting to me. I wanted it to be different. And it wasn't. So that's why I rated it low. But honestly, like, got those books on sale, not unhappy about it. All in all, it was a really good month, and I've already read some really good books this month. So I'm excited for next month's reviews. Yeah, let me know if you have any other opinions or if you've read any of these books and would like me, if I haven't already, to read a book so you could see me talk about them if they're make my favorites in future. Eventually, I might have some books that are more like category reviews where they're like my favorites of a certain genre, but I don't really know, and I don't have a ton of time right now because I got a lot going on in my life. So it was nice to sit and chat about books with you. I hope y'all have a great rest of your month. Bye.